You mentioned before, chromatic planing.
Yes.
So kind of, right, just moving chromatically between keys. And another term that I've heard for this is shifting. And so a good friend of mine, Chad LB, sax player, he'll shift in and out of different pentatonic scales. So he calls it pentatonic shifting. But, taking this exact same concept, I think we can do the same thing, right? Like, so if we're doing motivic development, using this one little lick that has that flat 9 and really that little 4-note shape, we can look at this shape and see how can we develop this one shape in and of itself. So we could maybe intervallically take this exact shape and go. Sorry. So I'm taking this shape now, I'm literally just moving it up in minor thirds. And it's working great because now we're kind of going with this half whole diminished sound. And so that already sounds like a little bit like what's going on in this solo a little bit. And so that's why I wanted to actually propose to you all that we chat for a second about what are some of the different scales that are actually going to have that flat second or flat 9 in them. Because there are different options that, we're actually hearing here in this solo. So one really obvious, or I shouldn't say very obvious, but obvious because I just said it. One important option here would be that half whole diminished scale. And the half whole diminished scale is often referred to as actually like a dominant diminished scale, right? Because that half whole diminished is actually used most commonly on a dominant chord with a flat 9 in it, right? So Chick is almost playing all of these dominant chords as if they just inherently have that flat 9 inside them. So scale number 1 we could use here. It's going to be this, right? This half whole diminished scale. Okay, so that's a really, really good one to know, and we can, get all sorts of shapes from it. And the cool thing is, we kind of get this B, it's like the start of a B altered scale, right there. So that's one scale. Let's see, before I give some answers, does anybody else know some other scales that would have that flat 9 built in, but actually be a dominant sound? I actually did mention one of them just now, a couple seconds ago. Superlocrian. And another name for superlocrian, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, I forget sometimes. Altered scale, exactly. Yeah, exactly, the altered scale, right? So that's a really, yeah, so superlocrian is another name for altered. And so that scale looks like this. And the most common chord you'll get with that is the flat 7 with a sharp 5 and a sharp 9. So we call that the sharp 9, sharp 5 chord a lot of the time. But there's one other scale that's actually kind of a fun one, I think. So another one is actually going to be let's see what it's called. I want to say it's called the Mixolydian flat 2 scale, and it's actually a mode of harmonic major. Throwing in the super ultra hyper mega Mixolydian. That's a Jacob scale, right? Jacob Collier scale. I got to brush up on my Collier theory a little bit. But yeah, so the scale that I'm talking about here is actually, it looks like this. Ready? So that actually comes from the harmonic major modes. And if you don't know what harmonic major is, one thing I like to remind everybody, when it comes to modes, if you find modes confusing, that's okay. Modes are a little confusing, and modes, the whole concept to me, all that's important is it's just telling us the relationship between scales. If you decided to throw away the whole idea of modes right now in this moment, I wouldn't blame you. And if instead, what you take from this is simply, what does a Mixolydian flat 2 scale look like? And it looks like this. Because it literally is. It's just a flat 2. Right? That's it. But the scale, for anyone who's interested, that's coming from the harmonic major. So instead of a harmonic minor scale, which has the flat 3, sounds like that kind of, I guess, more sad sound, right? Well, this one has the major third. We get all these cool sounds. So that's another skill we can use. Now, before I go deeper, I'm going to turn it back over to Matt. But at some point, I want to also get into melodic scales. I forget who said it, but someone brought up melodic scales, and I think that's another good thing to talk about with this solo, because a lot of what he's doing is taking these different potential scalar sounds. Really big one that Matt mentioned, the B major over F sound, i.e. the major of the tritone, or the the dominant tritone substitution sound. That really just that sound. And I think that he's creating little 4-note cells out of these concepts. A lot of it's coming from pentatonics as well. So we got more stuff we can talk about here, but I don't want to get too off track from the actual solo. So, Matt, I end my tangent and I hand it back over to you.
No, thank you so much. No, that's such great info. And it's so important to, again, copy him in a way that gives you enough leeway to maintain your own creativity. And this is a great way to do that. One of the great things Noah has formulated too is what he calls hanging out with the scale. So what you could do is you could think of just an F drone. And you could play all of these, or maybe you're thinking of it as sort of an F7 here. Let me actually give you an overhead hand view as well. What you can do is just hang out with that, whichever scale. I'm going to just hang out with something a little bit more familiar, like a minor pentatonic or maybe a minor scale. Technically that wasn't in the scale. But yes, sue me. Then maybe I would hang out. I'm always thinking about what are the shades that are further and further out. So maybe I do Mixolydian next. That might be, or maybe I would start with Mixolydian. That's more consonant. Okay, then maybe minor blues could be another level of dissonance. Dissonance formulas is another thing that Noah talks a lot about. And I always think of it almost like a color wheel. Like what is a shade darker or lighter or less tense, more tense? Somebody said tension and release was such an important aspect of this solo, and here's another way to think about it, right? So minor blues, Mixolydian, right? Mixolydian, minor blues. Then maybe we go to one of these more out scales, like maybe we do the Mixolydian flat 2. I guess Cordy doesn't know this one. I think it knows double harmonic major. Yeah, but not harmonic major, which is hilarious. So now we're just taking that scale and literally just flatting the 2. Maybe we go further out. We go to the altered scale. There we go. Let me go least dissonant to most dissonant, in my opinion. Now, you might have a different take on this, which is great, and that will make you a musician that you are, and me, which is beautiful.